The impossible ultimatum. The hall was silent, but the silence was heavy, like the weight of 1,000 stones pressing down on every chest. Cold blue fire burned in long braziers along the walls, casting sharp shadows across the carved alien symbols. The human stood in the center of the chamber, his wrists bound with glowing chains, and before him stood two sisters, both trembling, both afraid. The judge, a towering alien with dark metallic skin and cruel glowing eyes, raised his staff and spoke. "Human, today you will choose. One sister shall live. The other shall die, fail to decide, and both will be executed before the crowd." Gasps filled the air. The alien audience leaned forward from the stone benches, hungry for blood, eager for a show. For them, this was entertainment. But for the human, it was a nightmare, the cruelest test he had ever faced. His eyes darted between the sisters, their thin figures shaking in the cold. The older one stood tall, her dark silver hair falling across her shoulders, trying to look brave even as tears streamed down her cheeks. The younger sister's hands shook as she pressed them to her chest, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Please, don't let me die." The human's heart pounded. Sweat rolled down his neck and his throat felt like it was closing. He remembered the days before this trial, when he first found the sisters starving in a ruined street. They had nothing, no family, no protection, only each other. And in that moment he had promised himself he would never let them suffer again. But now here he was, chained in the middle of an alien tribunal, forced to decide who must die. His chest hurt as he breathed, every second cutting him deeper. How could he choose? How could any person choose between two lives bound by blood and love? The judge's voice boomed again, shaking the walls. "Choose now, human. You have 1 minute." A countdown began to glow on the wall, 60 seconds ticking down like the beat of a war drum. The older sister suddenly spoke, her voice calm but filled with sorrow. "Choose me, let her live, she is younger. She deserves a future." Her hands balled into fists, her eyes wet, but she did not tremble. The younger sister cried out, "No! Save me. She is strong, she can survive anything." "I can't." Her words tore into the human's chest like blades, because he could see the truth in both of them. One was ready to sacrifice, the other desperate to cling to life. The audience began to roar, chanting, "Choose! Choose! Choose!" The sound shook the floor, like the pounding of 1,000 war drums. The human closed his eyes for a moment, his mind screaming images of their laughter, their fear. Their bond flashed through his thoughts. How could he betray one to save the other? The countdown showed 30 seconds. The human opened his eyes, his breath sharp and quick, his hands pulling against the glowing chains until they burned. His voice was dry but heavy with fire. "I cannot choose." The hall fell silent. The chant stopped for a heartbeat. Even the judge leaned forward, his glowing eyes narrowing. The human repeated louder, his voice echoing through the chamber. "I will not choose. If you kill them, you kill me too." The judge slammed his staff against the ground, sparks flying. "You dare defy the tribunal? Then all three shall perish." The sisters screamed his name, fear breaking their voices. The crowd erupted into chaos, some laughing, some shouting for blood, others whispering at the human's defiance. The countdown reached 10 seconds. Glowing brighter, guards moved closer, their weapons raised, their armor clanging against the stone floor. The human's chest heaved, his body tense like a coiled spring. Every nerve screamed for him to act, but his heart screamed louder. He could not abandon them. He stared at the sisters, his eyes burning, and whispered so only they could hear, "Hold on, don't lose hope. I promised I wouldn't let you go." 5 seconds remained. The judge raised his staff high, lightning dancing along its edges. The sisters clung to each other, their tears mixing as they looked at him. Time slowed, the air heavy with fear, and everyone waited for the human's choice, but instead of choosing, the human took one step forward, his chains sparking, his voice filled with rage and defiance. "No one dies today." The braziers flickered, the countdown froze, and the chamber erupted in chaos. The impossible ultimatum had been broken, and the story of defiance had just begun. The chamber was still echoing with the human's defiant shout, "No one dies today," he had cried, and those words now hung in the air like thunder. But as the guards moved closer, his mind was pulled back into memory, back to the very first time he had met the sisters. It was a broken city, half buried under alien ruins, where smoke still rose from shattered towers. The human had been wandering alone, searching for food, searching for something that would keep him alive one more night. That was when he saw them, 2 girls crouched in the shadows of a collapsed wall, their faces pale with hunger. The older sister had been shielding the younger with her thin arms. She held a piece of stale bread broken into two, but she pushed the larger piece into the younger girl's hands. Her own lips trembled with hunger. Yet she smiled at her sister, whispering, "Eat. You need it more." The human had stopped in his tracks, his heart twisting. They looked fragile, almost ghost-like, with dust and dirt covering their skin. But it was their eyes that struck him most, eyes full of pain, but also fire. The older one's gaze warned him to stay away, while the younger's eyes begged silently for help. He had nothing much, just a pouch with a few dried rations. Yet something deep inside his chest refused to walk past them. He sat down in front of them, ignoring the suspicious glare of the older sister, and slowly placed the food between them. "Take it. You need it more than I do," he said softly. At first they hesitated, expecting a trick. But when he pushed the food closer and leaned back, the younger sister reached out, her small hands shaking. She ate quickly, almost choking, while tears filled her eyes. The older sister finally took a bite too, though she kept watching the human as if waiting for betrayal. That night, under a broken roof, they shared stories. The sisters told him of how they lost their parents during the war, how they had run from slavers and cruel soldiers. They had survived only because they had each other. The human listened, his fists tight, anger burning at the thought of such cruelty. When they fell asleep beside the faint glow of a broken lantern, the human stayed awake, watching them. He realized something heavy and unshakable in that moment. He could not leave them. They were not just strangers anymore, they were his responsibility, his family. And in the silence of that night, he made a promise in his heart. "No one will hurt them while I breathe." Now, standing in the tribunal, with the judge's cruel eyes upon him, and the crowd screaming for death, that promise echoed louder than ever. It was the weight of his heart that kept his legs steady, that made his voice sharp when he defied the judge. The guards closed in, their boots striking against the floor like the march of doom. One raised his spear, pointing it directly at the human's chest. The judge sneered, "You dare remember kindness here? This is not a place for mercy, human, choose or die." But the human shook his head. "I remember everything. I remember hunger. I remember tears. I remember two girls who deserve to live. I will never forget." The sisters pressed closer together, tears in their eyes as they looked at him. The older one mouthed the words, "Why are you doing this for us?" The human met her gaze and whispered back, "Because I cannot do anything else." The crowd was restless now, no longer only hungry for blood, some aliens whispered among themselves, pointing at the human with something close to respect. It was rare to see such defiance. Rarer still to see it for slaves, two sisters who were nothing in the eyes of the tribunal. The judge slammed his staff again. The braziers flared with blue light. "You waste time, human. Your heart will be your doom." But the human only stood taller. "Yes, my heart is my doom. But it is also my strength." The words hit the air like a spark. The younger sister's sobs softened, replaced by a trembling hope. The older sister lowered her head, her lips pressing tight as if she could not believe someone would fight so hard for them. The countdown had stopped at the human's defiance, but the threat was still clear. If he failed to act, if he could not find a way, all three of them would be executed before the crowd. And yet deep inside his chest, his heart beat stronger than his fear. He knew he would rather die than betray his promise. The guards shifted, preparing to drag him down. The human looked once more at the sisters, his voice low but steady. "Trust me, whatever happens next, I will not let you fall." The moment burned into their eyes, and though fear still surrounded them, a new flame lit in their hearts. The human's heart was not just his own anymore, it was theirs too. And with that bond he stepped forward, ready to face the storm that was coming. The tribunal chamber shook with noise, alien voices rising like thunder. Some shouted for blood, others for mercy, but most demanded only one thing, a choice. The judge's staff glowed brighter, blue sparks dancing across the floor as his cruel voice echoed, "Enough delay. Human, pick one sister now or all three of you will be torn apart." The human's chains rattled as he clenched his fists. His body was tense, his heart pounding like a drum. He looked at the sisters, two lives bound by blood, by pain, by love, and he felt the crushing weight of the impossible. The older sister stepped forward first, her silver hair falling over her shoulder, her eyes steady despite the tears that glistened there. She raised her chin, her voice strong though it trembled at the edges. "Choose me, let her live," she said. "She is younger, she has not seen the world. I have carried her this far, let me be the one to pay the price," the younger sister gasped, shaking her head wildly. "No! No, save me, I cannot face death." "I am not as strong as her," she cried. Her voice cracked. Her small hands reached toward the human, clutching at the air as if trying to hold on to him. "Please, please don't let me go. I don't want to die." The human's heart split in two. One begged for life, the other begged for sacrifice. Both voices struck him like knives, cutting deeper with every word. He felt as if the tribunal walls were closing in on him, crushing him with the weight of his choice. The crowd roared louder, stomping their feet, their chants echoing, "Choose! Choose! Choose!" The sound was deafening, shaking the air, making the sisters flinch and cover their ears. The human's head pounded, but he forced himself to keep looking at them. He remembered nights when they huddled by a fire, the older sister wrapping her thin blanket around the younger, whispering promises that she would protect her no matter what. He remembered the younger girl clutching his arm, asking if he would leave them, and how he had sworn never to. He had seen their bond, their love, their unbreakable connection, and now he was asked to cut it apart with his own words. The judge leaned forward, his eyes glowing. "This is mercy, human. This is order. One must die. One must live. That is the law." His staff struck the ground, sparks leaping high. "You will choose, or all will suffer." The older sister's lips trembled, but her eyes were hard. "Please," she whispered again, her voice only for the human. "Do this for her." "Let me go," the younger sister cried louder, tears streaming down her face. "No, I don't want to die. I want to live. Please save me." Her words broke him, because they were honest, raw, desperate. The human closed his eyes, his breath ragged. The sound of their voices filled his head, their pleas wrapping around his heart like chains. If he spoke, he would betray one. If he stayed silent, all three would die. The crowd's roar rose to madness. The guards stepped closer, spears glinting in the firelight. The judge lifted his staff high, his voice booming. "Choose now, or I will end all three." The sisters both cried his name, their voices colliding, one begging to be sacrificed, the other begging to be saved. And in that storm of desperation, the human's chest heaved as he shouted, "Enough!" The chamber froze, the roar of the crowd dying into whispers. His voice cut through the air like a blade, sharp, unyielding. "I will not choose between them," he said, his chains glowing as he pulled against them. "You call this law? You call this justice? This is cruelty, nothing more." The judge's eyes narrowed, rage burning. "You dare insult the tribunal? You dare refuse?" The human's gaze burned back. "They are sisters, their bond is life itself. You cannot make me decide who should die." His voice cracked but grew stronger with every word. "I would rather fall with them than betray either one." The chamber was silent for a long, heavy moment. The sisters clung to each other, their tears falling but their hearts beating with new fire. For the first time they saw someone stand not only for them but with them. Then chaos erupted. Some aliens booed, furious that the spectacle was ruined. Others whispered in awe, some even cheering the human's defiance. The judge slammed his staff again, sparks shooting into the air. "You will regret this. Human, for this insolence all three shall perish." The guards advanced, weapons raised, the blue fire burning hotter. The sister's pleas still echoed in his ears, but now there was no turning back. The human had not chosen death for one, he had chosen rebellion for all. And in that moment the sister's pleas became something greater. Not just cries for life, but a spark that could ignite defiance. A storm was coming, and the human was ready to face it. The judge's staff struck the ground again, the crack of energy echoing like thunder. Blue fire shot across the stone floor. Crawling toward the human's feet, the crowd roared with excitement, sensing the moment had come, the moment of death. But the human did not step back. Instead, he planted his feet firmly, his chains glowing brighter as he pulled against them with all his strength. His eyes burned with defiance, his voice cut through the noise. "I said no one dies today." Gasps rippled through the audience. No one had ever spoken like that to the tribunal. No one had ever refused the judge's decree. The sisters clutched each other, their tears mixing with fear and a sudden spark of hope. The older one whispered, "He's going to get himself killed." The younger shook her head, her voice trembling. "No, he won't." He promised. The guards moved in, their spears raised high. the metallic tips shining under the firelight. They thought the human was weak, that his words were nothing. But the human's heart had been forged through hunger, loss and love, and now it was stronger than any chain. With a sudden roar, he pulled against the glowing shackles. The chains burned his skin, but with one final wrench, the links cracked. The sound of breaking metal rang through the chamber. The crowd gasped, some leaping to their feet in shock. The human was free, his wrists bled, but his spirit blazed. He grabbed the nearest guard's spear and swung it wide, knocking 2 soldiers back with a single strike. Chaos exploded. The crowd screamed, some cheering, some cursing. The judge's eyes glowed with fury. "Seize him! End them all!" he bellowed. The guards charged, but the human fought like a storm. Every move was fueled by rage, by the promise he had made, by the love he carried for the sisters. He fought not like a trained warrior, but like a man who had nothing left to lose. The sisters ran to him, desperate to stay close. "Stay behind me," he shouted, spinning the spear to block another strike. The older sister grabbed a fallen guard's blade, clumsy but determined. The younger one pressed against his side, refusing to leave him. The chamber was filled with the clash of metal and the cries of the crowd. Blue flames flickered wildly, shadows dancing against the walls. The tribunal, once a place of fear and order, now burned with rebellion. The human's defiance was not just for the sisters anymore. Every word, every strike was for something larger, for every life crushed under this so-called law, and the crowd began to feel it. Whispers rose, voices spread. Can he win? Could he break the tribunal? The judge's face twisted in rage. "You think one human can defy an empire? You will be crushed." He raised his staff, summoning lightning that crashed into the floor, sending cracks through the stone. The human stumbled but held his ground. The sisters pressed close, their eyes wide with terror. But then something unexpected happened. Members of the crowd began to cheer. Not many, not loud, but enough to be heard. "Fight! Don't let them win, fight!" The human's chest heaved as he looked around. For the first time, he realized he was not alone. His rebellion had lit a spark in others, a spark the judge could not control. With renewed strength, he struck again, forcing back another line of guards. The older sister slashed wildly at one soldier, surprising him enough to make him fall. The younger screamed as a guard reached for her, but the human spun, his spear cutting the air. Driving the soldier back, the judge snarled, his voice shaking the chamber. "This ends now." He raised his staff high, the lightning gathering, brighter than before. But before he could strike, the human threw the spear with all his might. The weapon spun through the air, glowing as it caught the firelight. It struck the judge's staff, shattering the tip into sparks. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The judge stumbled, his power broken for a moment. The crowd gasped again, louder this time, the spark of rebellion turning into flames. The human, bleeding and breathless, turned to the sisters. "Now we run," he said, his voice low but sharp with urgency. He grabbed their hands, pulling them toward the nearest passage. Guards were still closing in, but the crowd had shifted, some blocking the way, others pushing soldiers back. The rebellion had begun, not with an army, not with weapons, but with one human's refusal to choose death for the innocent. And as they fled into the dark passage, the sisters holding tight to his arms, the spark grew brighter. For the first time, hope was stronger than fear. The passage was narrow and dark, its walls carved from old stone. The human ran first, his breath sharp and heavy, while both sisters clung to his hands. Behind them, the chaos of the tribunal chamber still echoed, shouts, screams, and the clash of metal. The rebellion had begun, but so had the hunt. "Faster," he urged, pulling them along. The older sister stumbled but forced herself to keep pace, gripping the stolen blade tightly. The younger sister's eyes darted wildly, fear racing in her chest. "They're coming. I can hear them," she cried. Indeed, the sound of boots thundered through the tunnels. The guards were not giving up, their armor clanging as they closed in. Blue fire torches lit the walls, their light flickering across the sisters' terrified faces. The human's heart pounded, not only from the chase, but from the weight of his promise. He could not let them be captured. Not after everything. Not after defying the judge. Every step forward was a step against fate itself. The tunnel forked into 2 paths. The human stopped for a split second, his chest heaving. The left path echoed with rushing water, the right path with faint voices. Which way was safer? He could not know. The older sister stepped forward, her voice urgent. "The water. It might lead to the river outside the city. The younger clung tighter to his arm, shaking her head. No, no, the voices mean people. We could hide among them. The human clenched his jaw, the weight of another impossible choice pressing down on him. Behind them, the sound of guards grew louder. There was no time, no chance to debate. He pulled them left toward the sound of water. Trust me, he whispered, even though he wasn't sure himself. The tunnel grew colder, damp air filling their lungs. Soon they reached a wide underground canal, dark water rushing below. A broken bridge stretched halfway across. The rest collapsed into the depths. The younger sister's voice cracked. We can't cross that. The older looked at the water with steady eyes. It's our only chance. The guards burst into the passage behind them, torches lighting the stone. Seize them, a voice roared. Arrows clattered against the wall. One skimming so close the younger sister screamed. The human's chest heaved. His decision was made. He grabbed both sisters, pulling them to the edge of the broken bridge. Hold on to me, don't let go! He shouted without hesitation. He leapt. The three of them flew across the gap. The older sister's scream tore through the air. The younger shut her eyes tight. They hit the far side hard, rolling against the stone but alive. The guards stopped at the edge, snarling in frustration. A few tried to leap after them, but most stumbled into the rushing water below. The rest stayed back, aiming arrows across the gap. The human shielded the sisters with his body as arrows clattered around them. He grabbed a broken shield from the floor, raising it to cover their heads. We have to keep moving, he cried. They stumbled deeper into the tunnel, the roar of water growing louder. The path sloped downward, slick with moss. The human slipped but caught himself, dragging the sisters along. The older sister's face was pale, but her grip was iron. The younger sobbed, I can't. Yes, you can. The human snapped, his voice both sharp and desperate. You are stronger than you think, don't stop now. At last they reached the end of the passage. A massive grate stood before them, blocking the way to freedom beyond it. Moonlight shimmered on the water of the outside river. Freedom was so close and yet so far. The human rammed his shoulder against the grate. It didn't move. He grabbed the bars with bloodied hands, pulling, straining, his teeth clenched in fury. Come on, he growled. The sisters pressed close behind him. Fear in their eyes, the older one whispered, They're coming. And she was right. The sound of boots grew louder again. The guards were not far behind, and this time, there was no crowd to slow them. The younger sister grabbed his arm, her voice breaking. Please, don't leave us. If they catch us. He turned sharply, his eyes burning with fire. I will never leave you, do you hear me? Never. Summoning every ounce of strength left in him, he roared and pulled the grate. The rusted metal groaned, shaking under his grip. With one final heave, it tore free and crashed into the water below. The moonlight poured into the tunnel. Cold night air rushed in. Filling their lungs with hope, the sisters gasped, tears spilling from their eyes as the human pulled them forward. They leapt into the river, the icy water swallowing them whole behind them. The guards finally reached the end of the tunnel. Their torches lit the dark, but it was too late. The human and the sisters were gone, carried by the river's current into the unknown, and as the water dragged them through the night, the sisters clung to him, fear still in their hearts, but also something new, hope, fragile but alive. For the first time, the impossible choice had not ended in death. It had ended in escape, but the night was not done with them yet. The river carried danger as well as freedom, and the true cost of defiance was only beginning to show. The river was wild and cold, its current pulling like the hands of 1,000 enemies. The human fought against it, his arms locked tight around the sisters. Each breath burned in his chest as icy water swallowed them again and again. But he refused to let go, his grip stronger than the storm. The older sister coughed, gasping for air, her silver hair plastered to her face. The younger cried out, choking as the water dragged her down. Hold on, the human shouted, his voice raw against the roar of the river. I've got you both, don't let go of me. At last the current spat them out against a muddy shore. The human pulled the sisters onto the ground. Collapsing beside them for a moment, there was only silence, broken by the sound of their ragged breathing. The night sky stretched above them, cold stars watching their struggle. The older sister pushed herself up first, clutching her side. Her eyes scanned the dark forest beyond the riverbank. They will come for us, she whispered, her voice heavy with certainty. They will never stop, the human nodded, His chest still heaving, his body ached, his wrists bled from broken chains, but his spirit did not bend. Then we keep moving. We don't stop until we're free, the younger sister trembled, her small hands clutching his torn shirt. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered, "You should have let one of us die. It would have been easier. They wouldn't be hunting you now." Her words cut him like a blade, but he cupped her face, forcing her to look into his eyes. "Listen to me, I don't care about easier. I care about you, both of you. You are alive because we refused their law, and I would rather bleed than live with that choice." The older sister's lips trembled as she watched. Her heart clenched. She had never seen anyone risk so much for them. They had been nothing but slaves, forgotten by the world, but here was a human, standing against an empire, simply because he could not watch them die. The peace did not last. The forest shook with the sound of horns, deep and haunting. The sisters flinched, their eyes wide with terror. The human rose to his feet, fists clenched. "They've sent hunters," he muttered. Torches lit the far side of the river. Dark figures moved among the trees, their armor shining faintly under the moonlight. The tribunal guards were relentless. They had crossed the river. They would not stop. The human turned to the sisters, urgency burning in his voice. "Run, into the trees. Don't look back." The older sister shook her head fiercely. "No, we stay with you." The younger clung tighter, her voice breaking. "If you fight them alone, they'll kill you." He almost shouted back, but stopped instead. His hand tightened on theirs. "Then stay close. But you listen to me, we survive together. We do not give them what they want." The forest swallowed them as they ran. Branches whipped their faces, the ground was uneven and cruel. Every step was agony, every breath a war. But the sound of pursuit grew closer. Suddenly an arrow whistled through the air, striking the ground near their feet. The younger screamed, the older pulled her forward. The human spun, grabbing a fallen branch, his eyes burning with fire. When the first guard burst through the trees, spear raised, the human swung. The branch cracked against the soldier's helmet, sending him crashing to the ground. Another lunged forward, blade flashing. The older sister cried out and, with trembling hands, thrust her stolen dagger. The strike was clumsy, but it cut across the soldier's arm. He snarled, stumbling back, giving them a chance to run again, but the human staggered, his side bleeding where a blade had grazed him. He fell to one knee, his vision swimming. The sister screamed his name, rushing back to pull him up. "Leave me!" He growled, his voice sharp with pain. But the younger shouted back, her eyes blazing with tears. "No! You didn't leave us, and we won't leave you." Their small hands dragged him up, their bodies trembling with effort, and somehow he found the strength to stand again. Not because of his body, but because of them, because they believed in him. The hunter's horn sounded again. Closer now, the forest was alive with enemies, and escape seemed impossible. Yet even in the darkest moment, the sister's grip reminded him of his vow. They would not be broken apart, not by chains, not by blades, not by fear. The human lifted his head, his voice low but steady. "They want us to surrender, they want us to break." He glanced at the sisters, their faces pale but fierce. "But we won't, not tonight. Not ever." And with those words they pushed deeper into the forest, bleeding, hunted, desperate, but still together. The price of defiance was heavy. And yet it carried something the tribunal could never understand. Hope, burning brighter than fear. The forest was endless, the night cruel. Every step tore at the human strength. Every breath burned in his chest. The sisters clung to him, their small hands gripping his arms as if letting go would mean death. Behind them, the sound of horns and shouts grew louder. The tribunal guards were closing in at last. They stumbled into a clearing where the trees gave way to an ancient stone circle. Ruins stood tall like broken teeth, glowing faintly under the silver light of the moon. The sisters gasped, their eyes wide with fear. "There's no way forward," the older whispered. "We're trapped." The human's chest heaved, his wounds bleeding. He looked around, seeing no path, no escape, only the circle of old stones. The hunters would be here in moments, and this time, there would be no running. The younger sister shook her head wildly, tears streaming. "It's over, they'll kill us all, it's over." She buried her face in his torn shirt, sobbing. The older stood straighter, though her hands trembled. "Then let them take me. At least one of you can live." The words cut him deeply. The same cruel demand of the tribunal echoed here, the demand to choose. But this time the human's heart blazed with fire. He turned to them, his voice raw and sharp. No, I will not choose between you, not now, not ever. The horns sounded closer. The glow of torches lit the trees. The hunters were almost upon them. The sisters clung tighter, their breath shaking. What will we do? The younger cried. The human raised his head, bloodied but unbroken. We make them choose instead. The first line of guards broke into the clearing. Their armor shone in the moonlight, their spears raised behind them. The cruel judge stepped forward, his eyes blazing with fury. You think you can defy us forever, human? This is the end. The crowd of soldiers surrounded them, torches casting shadows across the stones. The sisters pressed close against him, both shaking but refusing to let go. The human's voice carried through the clearing. You gave me an ultimatum, a choice between two lives. Now I give one to you, Judge. Kill them. And you prove your law is nothing but cruelty. Spare them. And you admit your law is broken. The guards hesitated, whispers spreading among them. Some lowered their spears, their faces uncertain. The crowd that once demanded blood now faltered. Shaken by his words, the judge snarled, slamming his staff into the ground. They are nothing. Slaves, their lives mean nothing. But his voice cracked with rage. And even his soldiers heard it. The human stood tall, his eyes blazing. No life is nothing, they are worth more than your whole tribunal. And I would rather die here than bow to your law. The sisters gasped at his words, their hearts swelling with something they had never felt before. Not just hope, but belonging. For the first time, someone had said their lives mattered. For the first time, they were not nothing. The guards shifted uneasily, their torches flickering. Some muttered, he's right. This is wrong. Others stepped back, doubt spreading like fire. The judge's control slipped, his face twisting in fury. He raised his staff, lightning crackling. But before he could strike, one soldier shouted, No more! This isn't justice! The cry spread, voices rising. Another dropped his spear. Another pushed his torch to the ground in moments. The crowd was divided, half still loyal, half shaken. The human's voice rang out over the chaos. You asked me to choose who should die, but I choose something else. I choose life for them both. I choose freedom. The sisters clung to his arms, tears running down their cheeks in that moment. The impossible choice was rewritten. Not one life, not the other. Both. The judge screamed with rage, but his words were drowned out by the crowd. The spark of rebellion that began in the tribunal now roared into flames. The guards who still obeyed were forced back by their own brothers. The sisters looked at the human, their voices breaking. You did it. You really did it. He smiled faintly, blood on his lips. No, we did it. Together, the night was filled with chaos. But in the center of the storm, three figures stood unbroken. The tribunal's cruel law had demanded death. But the human had carved a new truth into the world. That mercy was stronger than fear. That love was stronger than chains that sometimes defiance could rewrite destiny. And as the sisters held him, their hearts finally free, they knew the galaxy itself would remember this night. Not as the night one sister died, but as the night a human taught them all a different choice, the choice to live